Yeah.
Okay, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Township of Hillsborough Planning Board Business Meeting. It's Thursday, June 23rd, 2020. Would you all please join me in a salute to the flag?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This meeting has been duly advertised according to Section 5 of the Open Public Meetings Act, Chapter 231, Public Law 1975, also known as the Sunshine Law. Notice of the 2022 annual meeting schedule has been provided to the officially designated newspaper, the Township Clerk, posted on the Township website and available at the Hillsborough Township Municipal Complex. The business agenda has been made available on the Township's website at https://nj.civicclerk.com/.com in accordance with the public meetings notice. May I have a roll call, please?
Chair Sirachi, Mayor Lapani, Mr. Senator Mina, Mr. Ciccarelli, and currently Committeeman Delcor are absent. Mr. Wagner?
I am here.
Mr. Beasley?
Present.
Mr. Scova?
Here.
Mr. Hustag?
Here.
Ms. Smith? Here. And Vice Chair Julian.
I am here. Next would be the Township professionals. So,
Oh, sorry. Mr. Maskey? Here. Mr. Mercy?
I'm not sure, but here.
Cass? Here. And I'm here.
okay, thank you. All right, next up on the agenda would be the May 12th, 2022 meeting minutes. So if you all would just take a minute, review those, and afterwards, if you have a motion to approve.
Everyone, Mr. Chairman, is eligible.
Okay, thank you.
Move, Mr. Chairman. I will second.
Okay, may I have a roll call on the minute meetings, please?
Mr. Wagner?
Yes.
Mr. Beasley?
Yes.
Mr. Scova?
Yes.
Mr. Hustag? Ms.
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
Vice Chair Julian.
Yes. Okay, next up on the agenda, we do not have any consideration of resolutions. I don't see any planning board business. I know Mr. Mask and I talked about this before. It's a business meeting, but I guess we can, since there's people here, if we want to open it for anybody to the public to talk about anything that's not on the agenda tonight at this time. No? Okay. Everybody okay? All right. We will move on then. Okay, next would be the consideration of ordinances.
You want to get up, Susan?
You do? Okay, I'm sorry.
You gotta move quickly, Susan.
I guess just state your name and address, please.
Okay, Susan Gulliford, Hunt Club Road. Okay, I have two general questions about how rezoning is done. The first one is, when an area is rezoned, are the neighbors within a certain distance advised of the rezoning or proposed rezoning or not?
Yes,
They would get a notice like the 200-foot one like you get?
correct.
Okay. When a rezoning is proposed, a lot of them are very general. It's being rezoned for houses or something without more specifics. Is that something that's set up by MLUL, or is it something the township can, for example, say houses, but not more than 15%, or so many houses, or so many square feet impervious, or anything like that?
All of the above.
Come on.
It depends on what you want to do. And I'll get into the presentation in a few minutes. When you amend a zoning ordinance, you could amend a definition, you could amend a boundary line, you could amend an entire zone. You can prohibit uses, you can permit uses, you can create conditional uses. So it really depends on what it is you're doing. So that
Okay.
all of the above, literally.
So it can be general, but the township has the option to make it a little more specific.
Well, it's all up to the township.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, thank you. All right, so next on the agenda is the consideration of ordinances, which I guess we're going to speak about tonight. It's ordinance, for the record, it's ordinance 2022-10, an ordinance amending the zoning map of the Township of Hillsborough, Somerset, County of New Jersey, to change the zone designation for certain lots from CDZ, Corporate Development Zone, and O-5 Office/Research to RA, which is residential/agriculture. So, Mr. Maskey, is that something that you can tell us about?
Certainly. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the ordinance we're discussing tonight, number 2022-10, was introduced by the Township Committee at their June 14th meeting. The ordinance has been referred to the Planning Board in accordance with the Municipal Land Use Law for comment. The public hearing on the ordinance is scheduled for the July 12th Town Committee meeting. The proposed ordinance, well, I should say the ordinance proposes to rezone certain parcels from CDZ and O5 to residential agriculture as illustrated on the map on the screen, which was also attached to the ordinance and part of a zoning analysis that my department prepared. Before I get into the specifics, though, let me provide you with some background. The proposed amendments address the first of three recommendations found in a recently conducted analysis of the CDZ and O5 districts in the general vicinity of, as shown on the map, the Roycebrook Golf Course, the former Glengarry, Central Jersey Airport at the top, Sacred Heart Cemetery, the Mindale Tract. So we looked at the CDZ and O5 zones, as I said, to see if they should be rezoned and what they would be rezoned to. That report was distributed to the board at the June 9th meeting, and it's also available on Civic Clerk. So in short, the analysis illustrated how both districts have been systematically reduced in size and geometry over the years, resulting in several disconnected parcels that are no longer reflective of the surrounding land uses or the township master plan. In order to illustrate that point, we prepared a map showing how the zones have changed since the 1980s. So here we go. This was a fun map. In 1982, the entire CDZ didn't even exist. It was a light blue as general industrial. And there was an O5 zone up in the upper corner. One thing to note of interest, this route here, this was I-95 running up through Hillsborough. And the zoning somewhat reflected the fact that the interstate was going to come through. By 1986, the entire GI zone, general industrial, was transformed into the CDZ, corporate development zone. Again, I think reflecting that I-95 was scheduled, planned to come through Hillsborough. So it would have been your typical corporate campuses on interstate intersections. But that began to change. In 2012, the entire southern half, if not more, of the CDZ was rezoned to a combination of the agricultural zone, which is mostly preserved farmland, the TECD zone, and the LI zone. So we were starting to push it up. By 2021, based on a few more amendments, the Roycebrook Golf Course was rezoned to a residential use. The Glengarry site was rezoned to residential use, so that in 2021, this is what is left of the CDZ and the O5 zone. So just to summarize, in 1986, the CDZ covered 2,600 acres. By 2021, today, it's down to 690 acres in two disconnected parcels. The O5 started out as 345 acres. It's down to 141 today. So we'll go back. Okay. So as I noted earlier, the ordinance 2022-10 addresses the first recommendation in that CDZ-05 report, which is to change the zone designations for 8 properties in the study area from either CDZ or O5 to the RA residential agricultural zone. Bear with me for a second. So to describe the properties. So at the top of the map, Sacred Heart Cemetery and an adjoining landscape contractor, they would go from CDZ to RA. Now, the RA is, part of the cemetery is already in the RA because the entrance is off of Millstone River Road, which is on the right here. So this would just be joined to the abutting RA zone. Important to note that cemeteries actually aren't permitted uses in the CDZ zone, but they are permitted in the RA zone. So it would be transforming the cemetery from a non-conforming use to a conforming use. We move down a bit, these two properties would change from 05 again to RA, which it abuts on the other side of Millstone River Road. The upper parcel is St. Peter's and Paul Cemetery. The second parcel is a vacant lot. Moving southward, there's 3 properties currently in the 05 zone. This first small parcel is owned by the county. It's actually sort of a leftover parcel when Hamilton Road was reoriented. So there's just nothing on it. The larger parcel 35 is part of what used to be known as the Timco tract. That's agricultural vacant. And the final lot 1 at the very tip has an existing 2-family house that fairly recently was granted a non-conforming status by the Board of Adjustment. Those 3 parcels, again, would be joined to the RA zone, which wraps around. Finally, we have this tail piece on the CDZ, which I'm not quite sure how it ever remained. It actually splits this lot 17 in half, so you have a split lot zone. This part of the lot is RA, as is this entire neighborhood. So the proposal in the ordinance is to just combine this lot into one zone, get rid of the CDZ, and make it RA. One of the reasons for picking the RA, perhaps as opposed to the R zone, which is the Claremont neighborhood, is that none of these properties are in the sewer service area. So it means they'd have to have a 2-acre minimum lot size. The R zone is a 1-acre minimum. So if we were to put these into the R, they'd be non-conforming. They're not in the sewer service area, and they'd have to have 2 acres. The RA minimum is 2 acres. So they're not in the sewer service area, so they would conform with the minimum lot size. So the intention is to rezone these properties to be consistent with the surrounding residential land uses, as I just described, and incorporate them into the adjoining RA zone. It should be noted that these amendments constitute boundary shifts, sort of getting to Ms. Gulliford's question earlier. They do not involve any changes to the requirements of the CDZ, 05, or the RA zone. So we're not making any bulk changes or use changes. All we're doing is changing boundaries. There would, of course, still be some CDZ and 05 left. The Mindell tract, let me get back to another map. So this would still be CDZ and the airport would still be CDZ. But this would be RA, this would be RA, most of this would be RA, and this here would be RA as well. Those remaining CDZ zones and a small part of the 05 zone, they're also addressed in the analysis in the report as recommendation 2 and 3, something for the board to take up at a subsequent meeting. How to basically rezone the airport. We recommended some sort of aviation like commercial zone to cover the airport. And the Mindell tract, as you probably know, the township owns the most of it. There are a scattering of properties along Amwell, the Pheasants Landing restaurants, Comcast facility. So we need to figure out what would be the best route to rezone that property. We've offered something in the range of a light commercial zone, however we decide to represent that. So in closing, the ordinance simply takes those 8 parcels, rezones them from either CDZ or 05 into the adjoining the adjoining RA zones. No changes to the zone requirements in and of themselves. So I'll be happy to take any questions if there are any.
I mean, just myself from, I would say probably lack of knowledge is the intent because from a master planning standpoint, you perceive more residential coming in than industrial, or does it balance like that, or?
It's not, it's what's appropriate to the area. First of all, as I pointed out in the historic map, the CDZ and the O5 have been chipped away over the years. I sometimes describe the CDZ zone as sort of an antiquated zone. I-95 obviously isn't there anymore.
Right.
We have the bypass, it's baby brother. So is it appropriate anymore to have these zones that nobody builds giant corporate office parks anymore anyway, and you don't have an interstate to service it. So is it appropriate for the surrounding land uses? You don't want to have piecemeal zones. Obviously, that one property, this 05 here, relatively small as zoning go. So zoning can go a couple ways. It's either represents what's on the ground and you like it and you want to keep it, or it represents a different direction you want to take in terms of what goes on to those properties. You look at the surrounding land uses, you look at the infrastructure, the road network, which is all covered in that report, and what's appropriate. As it turns out, the 1985 master plan map, which was relatively general, showed these areas as primarily residential, the ones that are going to R5. And they showed some green areas and some corporate type developments on the Mendel track. So on the one hand, it is consistent with the last master plan map that was done, but it's also reflective of, again, the surrounding land uses and how functional the zones can or could be given their current configuration and size.
I mean, I know affordable housing was a big driver in the past. I mean, in terms of residential zones.
Yeah, this is not a reaction to any affordable housing settlement. This is just rezoning that's really overdue.
To kind of balance things.
Yeah, as I said, starting in '86, the township started chipping away for various reasons, and this is sort of the final reconfiguring of that CDZ zone and 05 zone.
Yeah, hi. So I know, I think it makes sense that it's consistent with the surrounding neighborhoods. That makes a lot of sense. It seems also like a 2-acre lots, if that's what they're going to be. That seems good because it might minimize potential development if the lot is larger, would it? Or
Well, there's less density, yeah. But again, that's primarily because they're not in the sewer service area. So they're not going to get sewers. So by ordinance, regardless of what zone it's in, it has to have a minimum of 2 acres. Unless you have public water and sewer, you have to have a 2-acre lot. The RA minimum lot size is 2 acres, so it just fits.
so what, like with this change, what kind of development would be?
Well, the RA zone allows single-family homes and agricultural uses. It's RA, residential agriculture.
Okay.
What is the size of lot 40 and 35? I mean, those are really, 17 is obviously more than 2 acres, but.
40, lot
I know it's
40?
a 2-acre minimum, I'm just kind of curious.
Yeah, lot 40, I believe, is around 17. I think I might have it here somewhere.
So it could be subdivided.
The entire, well, the St. Peter and Paul Cemetery is 7 acres, that's not going away. The other lot is 17.42 acres. Lot 35.
Probably not much less than that.
I'm going to guess from past, it was around 19 acres in that range.
What could be built on that
Again,
35?
single-family homes and agricultural uses.
And 2-acre lots.
Yeah.
So it's 17 acres.
And all the homes around there are 1 acre, correct? Across the street, et cetera, that,
Well, I don't know for sure what they all are. The RA are larger lots than, for instance, the Claremont neighborhood. In the Claremont
there's a
neighborhood, it's
couple, yeah.
R,
There's 2-acre.
where it's 1 acre minimum.
So this is 17 acres.
Now, keep in mind that you can't just do straight math to figure out how many units you can get on any piece of property, because you need to have access. There's a general rule of thumb that you deduct about 20% roads and utilities, and that's how much how much acreage you actually have to develop. So it's not a straight, take 17 acres divided by 2, you know, get
Right.
8 houses. It doesn't work that way.
That's why I asked.
Excuse me, anybody else have anything?
Yeah, so with, kind of a philosophical question, with all the anti-development, as a planner, could you explain what's to prevent us from just zoning everything that hasn't been built into ag or, 2-acre minimums, and to keep apartments and warehouses from coming to bear?
You can. Nothing's stopping you. You'll be challenged, and you'd need to do some sort of massive rezoning. I would strongly recommend you redo your master plan first, because you have to have some basis for it. And even at that, I mean, you get into potential taking issues. You've rezoned my property out of any valuable use. Now, that being said, the western half of the township back in 2005, 2008, that very process was followed. Frank Banish was the consultant at the time. He did a whole master plan update covering the entire western portion of the township, and that resulted in the ag and the mountain zones that we have today. But it was based on environmental analysis, very strict reasons why you have a 10-acre minimum and a 15-acre minimum out there. It's based on science, if you will.
So there is something to it, of course.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Just sometimes you have to be careful what you wish for.
But very difficult, requiring significant proofs. And you have the kind of situation relative to the western end of town, the mountain zone, for example. A lot of that zone had already been bought up for open space, a lot of it by the county at that point. And the county was in the land buying phase of their lives. Again, lack of sewer. And to some extent, the amount of growth that can come about is somewhat restricted by the lack of sewer.
Mm-hmm.
So we're somewhat protected to the degree that there's only a limited amount of development because of the 2-acre.
Well, you got a limited amount
Without
for
the
2-acre, combined with the fact that anyone who wants to build on them has to put septic.
Right. So it does limit
Which
it
is
more
which
so
is not
than the
exactly right now
residential.
a desirable.
Well, the RA zone is one of our lower density zones in the township.
So I just have one more question. So that's, I mean, I think that's great, a good choice. But since it is near the river and there's been concern about building in that area, even though it's minimal with the RA zone, has there been any consideration for open space? I know there's probably a lot of factors that go into that.
That has nothing to do with zoning. You can't zone a piece of property open space. In essence, you've just
Right, right.
taken it. You got to pay somebody for
Right, I
it.
guess so it's a different question,
Yeah.
purchasing it with open space.
This is
funds.
relatively, you can purchase an industry, you can purchase a quarry if you want, you know. It doesn't matter
Okay.
what's on the site. You could buy an old factory, knock it down and call it open space. So open space acquisitions is different from zoning. It has
Right.
really nothing to do with zoning. You can't zone something out of use unless you're willing to buy it.
Great, thank you.
The designation, however, of an agricultural use opens up the opportunity for agricultural purchase.
Right, that's
Which
good.
does not exist if it is zoned strictly residential.
Mm-hmm.
So that at least opens up the opportunity, and as David indicated, you can't zone, contrary to public belief, you cannot zone property in open space. There's only 2 ways to put property in open space. You buy it, or you take it and buy it. The key word there is buy.
Right.
And as I noted just a little bit earlier, this is really like the first step in a 3-step process to really look at this entire section of the township and rezone it appropriately, given the history of the area. So this discussion will continue at subsequent meetings of the board or the master plan committee, one or the other. But tonight's discussion is about this specific ordinance, and it's about these 8 properties being rezoned.
Anybody else on the board have any questions? Um, Is this something we have to open to the public or, okay. So at this point, can I have a motion to open to public?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we are open to the public. If you have any questions on the ordinance, please come up to the mic, state your name and address, please.
Susan Gulliford, Hunt Club Road. I specifically have a few questions about the property. I can't remember the lot and block, the one that backs onto Franklin Drive off Millstone River Road. It's apparently two separate lots. First of all, they said these were not in areas not included. Yeah, that's the one in the sewer zone. So this would not be able to be hooked up to all the sewers that were put into the Claremont development. It's not close enough.
You'd have to apply for an amendment to the sewer service area through the county and DEP. There's a process any property owner would have to go through to get that sewer service area extended beyond where it is now.
Okay, so the sewer service that's there now goes up to Franklin. It just doesn't go up to those lots.
Yeah, right.
Okay. There's been a lot of problems in the last few years with flooding. Is that southernmost one the one that Redcom had their sign up and it was advertising online that they have a warehouse coming?
Yep.
Okay. And just above that is the back end of Roycebrook, the new Toll Brothers?
Well, the next lot over is St. Peter's and Paul Cemetery.
Okay, I thought that part coming out,
This is part of Roycebrook Golf Course.
that's the one.
Comes out to
Okay.
Millstone River Road, correct?
Okay.
That's existing, right?
There's been, first of all, I think that Toll Brothers left that without any residents in it. I thought it was part of their stormwater management. There's been a lot of problems in that area that have increased with flooding in the Claremont development, the people on Millstone River Road. And it seems like making it an RA and agricultural, the RA designation would make the price increase because it has development possibilities. If it was made only AG, if we were considering purchasing it, which I know you're not probably allowed to consider in this.
We can,
But if
but just, I'm sorry. No.
If it was AG, though, it would be a cheaper purchase
But that
price
would be
for the
spot
township.
zoning, and that's why we recommended that it be adjoined to an existing zone. That would be considered spot zoning, which is illegal.
Okay. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Anybody else from the public have any questions? Just please state your name and address for the record, please.
Hi, good evening. Chris Mueller, 30 Anka Drive. I just wanted to compliment Mr. Maskey on the work that he did. I did review the zoning analysis. I think the exhibit that he prepared for the historic zoning pattern really says a lot to this. At one point in time, Hillsborough relied on I-95 coming through. The zoning was put in place to take advantage of that, and unfortunately that never happened. And we were kind of left with this kind of puzzle of pieces. So I do think this is the best way to handle it, and I certainly am here to support that. So thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay.
Motion.
All right, if, at this point, we'd like a motion to close to public.
So moved?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so we are closed to the public. Eric, do you want to summarize what we need to do, or?
What's before this board tonight is one of the requirements of the planning board, which is to review and make comments or to basically support the ordinance that the township committee has drafted and introduced regarding land use. You have before you, as Mr. Maskey has set forth, an ordinance from the township committee seeking to rezone certain lots within the township to basically conform to the surrounding zoning. He's laid out for you the rationale for same. The board could choose to either A, reject the ordinance and recommend it not be adopted. B, that it wants changes made to the proposed ordinance, or C, it supports the ordinance in its current fashion. I believe that Mr. Maskey's presentation would indicate that he is recommending, as the Township's Director of Planning, that the board consider basically supporting the ordinance as it is currently constructed in accordance with conforming with the surrounding zoning and leaving additional options available for the property that currently do not exist as they are currently zoned.
So would it be?
It would be a motion by the board to support ordinance number 2022-10 as constituted.
Okay. Is it have to be forwarded to the township committee then next? Is that part of what we're?
The board would
approving?
make the recommendation back to the committee. It would then be up to the committee at its July 12th meeting to conduct the public hearing on the ordinance and then vote to adopt.
Okay.
All you're doing is commenting on the propriety of the ordinance. You are taking no formal action as to its adoption.
Okay, well, thank you. So then we would take a roll call based on what Mr. Bernstein just summarized, supporting the ordinance in its current fashion as it's currently constructed. Right?
Any motion
Need a
to
motion for
basically
that.
to recommend to the committee that the planning board supports ordinance 2022-10 in its current configuration for the reasons set forth in Mr. Maskey's report of June 15th.
Okay. Can I have a motion for that?
That's to go to RA, correct?
Yeah, changing pieces of the O5 and CDZ zone to RA.
I'll make that motion, Mr. Chairman.
I'll second.
Can I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Wagner,
Yes.
Mr. Peterson,
Yes.
Mr. Scoba,
Yes.
Mr. Aztec.
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Vice Chair Gruen.
Yes. Okay. Do we have anything else we need to talk about? Or?
No, that's it for tonight. The next meeting is July 7th. Please let the board know if you can or cannot make it. It's Homestead Road LLC, the warehouses continued.
Very good. All right, well, with nothing else
The
on the
same thing
agenda.
applies, folks, for the July 14th meeting. We have an applicant coming in that night, so if there are going to be people missing, we need to know now.
Yeah, and just
Or
so,
not now, but
Yeah.
in advance of the
The
meeting.
near
so
future.
Sure, we have a quorum.
just so you all have a sense of schedule, we are basically booked through October. So we're not going to be canceling any meetings anytime soon. July 7th, July 14th, a definite. September 1 is definite. September 8th, fairly definite. October 6th, we have another one. And October 13th, Harvard Way comes back. If you recall, they were continued to October. So we're pretty much booked through October 13th.
Who was on the 14th?
The 14th.
Glengarry,
Glengarry, M&M, Glengarry, the
M&M.
Western Tract.
a piece of the tract.
Yeah, well, we just heard them at the Environmental Commission. Okay.
And that, by the way, is assuming that everybody those nights gets their approvals.
Okay.
So I would assume, for the sake of this discussion, I think Mr. Maskey would concur, we will probably book through the rest of the year.
Absolutely. Right. This is just the first hearing on most of it. So the Homestead Road obviously is a continuation, but I expect a third
And
meeting on
Harvard
that.
Way. The rest of them are
Right.
first.
The rest of them are first hearing, so any of all of them carried, that's basically filling out the rest of the calendar year. Correct.
Okay. So this will be the only time that we get out of here at 8:05.
Yes.
Well, you can get out before at 8 o'clock, but we take other actions.
Well, you're off August. You have no meetings in August, so
Okay.
you're good there.
So
Okay.
just be warned.
Yes.
All right, well, I don't want to keep anybody past 8:05 tonight. So that being said, can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you.